Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. Let's set the scene. You are sitting in a boardroom, right? Staring down the barrel of a $100 million contract review. And here's the kicker. Standard, everyday English? It completely lacks the precision to lock down a deal of this magnitude. Today, we're analyzing the exact linguistic tools you need to secure your agreements, zooming in on advanced conditionals and conditional inversion.
Okay, let's dive into this. Take a look at a typical clause you might see drafted by a junior associate. If you don't pay on time, we will cancel the agreement. I mean, sure, it's clear, but in a corporate boardroom, this junior-level if clause lacks absolute authority. Honestly, it feels way too conversational, almost casual. When you're dealing with massive liabilities, using everyday language like this can trigger what linguists call pragmalinguistic failure. Basically, your language doesn't match the immense gravity of the situation, and it can totally cost you your executive presence.
Now, compare that to an executive-level revision. Provided the payment is not received. Wow, right? The tone shifts immediately. That elevated vocabulary instantly commands respect. It completely strips away the emotional, slightly aggressive tone of, if you don't pay, and replaces it with this objective, impenetrable boundary. This is exactly how you tighten the legal perimeter of your contracts.
Which brings us to our first tactical strategy, securing the perimeter using formal substitutes. To truly bulletproof your agreements, we've got to eliminate those basic if statements whenever formal conditions are on the table. In advanced C1 English, and especially in commercial management and legal frameworks, we rely on specific terminology that basically acts as contractual armor. Let's run through these 4 legal locks. We've got provided that, as long as, on the condition that, and supposing. Now, these aren't just casually suggesting a possibility. They establish strict, absolutely non-negotiable conditions. Provided that is basically your standard workhorse for contracts. On the condition that, well, that sets a hard, absolute boundary. And supposing is this incredibly strategic tool for projecting hypothetical risk.
Let's actually look at that last one in action. Think about the difference between if we experience a market crash and supposing we experience a market crash. Supposing perfectly frames an extreme hypothetical scenario for our risk committee to analyze. It actively invites the board to mentally step into that disaster scenario and evaluate the fallout, but without making it sound like an everyday likely possibility. It's subtle, for sure, but incredibly powerful when you're framing high-level risk discussions.
But hey, what if you want to project the ultimate level of formal authority? Well, there's an executive power move that takes things even further. You literally drop the if entirely. When you eliminate that tiny word, you elevate your text from just a standard business proposal to a binding, totally airtight legal covenant.
This technique is what we call conditional inversion. By definition, it's the grammatical omission of the word if and the inversion of the subject and the auxiliary verb. We use it to project highly formal authority and pure objectivity. Honestly, this is exactly how top-tier legal advisors, diplomats, and senior executives maintain such a commanding register in all their documentation.
Let's move to how this actually works. Mechanically, it's pretty simple if you stick to the formula. Step 1, you completely remove the word if from your conditional clause. Step 2, you take your subject and your auxiliary verb, words like should, were, or had, and you invert them. They just swap places.
And this brilliantly illustrates the direct translation from basic to executive phrasing across 3 different tenses. For a present or future possibility, if you require becomes should you require. Looking at a hypothetical future, if we signed shifts beautifully to were we to sign. And for a hypothetical past, like looking back at a missed opportunity, if we had known transforms into had we known. Just look at the sheer professionalism of those inverted phrases.
Now you might be wondering, why are we being so absolutely obsessive about this grammar? Well, because this is the number on the table. $100 million. In complex commercial negotiations, a contract of this scale can literally fall apart over one tiny grammatical ambiguity or even just a perceived lack of professionalism. When you use conditional inversion, you leave absolutely zero room for misinterpretation. But on the flip side, if you execute it poorly, the consequences are severe.
Which means we need to shift our tone a bit. Welcome to Disaster Aversion, the error clinic. We are going to analyze a poorly drafted termination clause. Interlanguage studies actually show that even highly advanced learners can suffer from what's called fossilization, basically retaining ingrained grammatical errors when they're under pressure. And in a contract, an error in an inverted conditional doesn't just look embarrassing, it can completely invalidate the entire clause.
So read this clause drafted by a super-stressed negotiator. Had we known the market trends, we would have terminated the contract. I really want you to actively engage with this one. Can you spot the fatal flaw? What exact mistake here could spark a massive legal dispute over whether this termination clause is actually binding?
All right, here's the reveal. It's a verb tense error. The incorrect version says had we know, but the correct, fully legally binding version is had we known. Here's the thing. When you omit the if and pull had to the front of the sentence, you're still operating in the past perfect tense. The main verb absolutely must be maintained as a past participle. So know becomes known. If you forget this, your clause just collapses.
Let's try a second high-stakes scenario. Our negotiator tries once again to use conditional inversion, but this time they write, had known we the market trends. Spot the structural flaw here. This is a classic error where the entire linguistic structure breaks down under the weight of trying to sound formal. So, where exactly did they go wrong?
So, the crucial point here is the exact placement of the subject. The incorrect version awkwardly lumps the verbs together, saying, had known we, but the correct version is, had we known. The subject, which in this case is we, has to sit exactly right between the auxiliary verb had and the main verb known. It splits them right down the middle. Subject placement is quite literally the architectural keystone of an inverted sentence.
Okay, now it's time to put your own skills to the test under pressure. Welcome to the resolution, the executive speed test. I'm going to throw 3 standard contract alerts your way. Your job? I want you to mentally rewrite them into formal, inverted structures on the spot. No hesitation. Let's see if you can successfully defend the contract.
Here we go. Alert number 1 comes across your desk from a client facing an operational issue. If you need further assistance, try to translate that into an inverted, formal C1 structure in your head right now.
Got it? The C1 inverted standard is, should you require further assistance? Do you notice how immediately that elevates the professional authority of the communication? It's polite, absolutely, but highly professional and appropriately distant. Moving to alert number 2. The risk committee is actively debating a future hypothetical scenario. A junior associate pipes up and says, if we sign the contract, go ahead and invert that hypothetical situation right now to command the room. And the executive version is, were we to sign the contract? Brilliant, right? You've instantly changed the entire dynamic from a casual chat into a highly serious strategic evaluation of a future commitment. Finally, alert number 3. This is the ultimate test. We are looking back at a past market disaster. The standard, everyday phrase is, if we had known the market trends, formulate that inverted structure in your head. Make sure you lock in the correct subject placement and that tricky past participle. The flawless C1 inverted execution is, had we known the market trends. Huge congratulations! You have just secured the multi-million-dollar deal with absolutely pristine, unassailable grammar. You navigated that risk committee with total precision.
We've seen firsthand today how standard English can totally fall short in the boardroom, and how formal substitutes and conditional inversion can build this impenetrable legal wall around your agreements. So I'll leave you with this final thought for our explainer. How will you use conditional inversion to command absolute authority in your next high-stakes negotiation? Because remember, at this level of business, you aren't just communicating, you're actively protecting the bottom line. Until next time, keep analyzing, keep refining, and keep commanding the room.